Thank you very much, President, dear Pat, and hello to all the known faces in the plenary here. Some of you I have been sharing the same benches with during many years. I'm very moved to see all of you back, and I am recalling also the discussions we had during our times, because those were times when we were building the European Union and when developments like the ones we are living today were simply seen as very far away and very unlikely to happen. And nevertheless, the evolution, if not to say the revolution, the European Union has taken in the last months and years due to the wake-up call of the crisis is enormous, and many of our citizens have not managed yet to understand what has been going on during those years and to adapt. And many politicians out there have forgotten to tell them and to take them on the way to the revolutions which have happened. But we are standing very shortly, as Pat has underlined, in front of European elections. And we collectively, those who are fighting for building Europe, have to go out and explain and answer questions. And I do believe that former members of this Parliament are best suited in order to take over some of the responsibilities. You know about speaking to citizens, you know about inspiring citizens, you know about explaining to citizens why this does not happen and why this has happened, and what it will be good for that the happenings are followed by other actions, because you have experienced this and you have been, during your time in the European Parliament, a true bridge between Brussels, Luxembourg, Strasbourg and the citizens. And that is what is the most important, and sometimes I have the impression that this is forgotten. Like you, and the President has said it, I have been elected, re-elected and re-elected again. I was sitting 10 years in this Parliament, and when I became Commissioner, I decided that as being part of the executive, you have first to be elected. And that's why during my whole tenure as now 14 years as Commissioner, I've always gone to the European elections. I had for this to take an unpaid leave of absence. It was made very difficult to me because it was not seen positively that a commissioner went for elections. I tell you something, the time will come where you will have no member of the executive who will not have passed from the elections. But you see, evolution needs a long time to go sometimes. And it is also important that people who are sitting in the executive do know what the people who have been voting for the Parliament are thinking. Because the biggest link in order to get European law, European changes done, is the link between the Commission and the Parliament. And I don't say that now because I'm sitting in front of parliamentarians. It's because I have experienced that again and again. The joint venture, if the Commission has well prepared a proposal and the Parliament wants it, that is an unbeatable joint venture. And it is always a joint venture with the citizen, with the general interest of all Europeans in view, whereas the Council, and also this is normal, has a very restricted linked to a small territory view on things. So the harmony, although we have discussions to let and differences in political views, but in the end the harmony of the views in the interest of Europe between the Commission and the Parliament are very strong. And the opposition then, if both have made their minds clear, between this group of the two institutions and the Council sometimes is very big. And that is why I do believe that this European interest, this common interest, has to be served by those who are going for election. Most of all because it becomes very fashionable lately, but it was already at your times also, that in the governments, when things are going well, it is the minister of the government who has done it. And if something is going wrong, it is Brussels who has done the mischief. Now that is a rule. There are exceptions to this rule, we all know them. But in general it is this. And then it becomes very difficult, because imagine, you are saying during years and years that everything good comes from the state, from the government, and then during 14 days before the elections you go out and say Europe is wonderful. Now that doesn't work. And that is a big difficulty, to make Europe and its deeds pass into the mind of people. And this is a big chance, and Pat has given some examples why populist movements are seeing such big applause, because they simply said, we are against, we don't want. And that is a very simple expression which can be followed by a lot of people. And so why is it followed by the people? Simply because the people don't know. And did we collectively manage to explain what we collectively are doing to the people in the right way? Or is it also so that all the things we are doing in a positive way do not go to the headlines? Because good news is no news. But what we are doing not so well, that goes to the headlines. So the people only out there, they get the negative headlines, they never get the positive headlines. And so the work in order to get over to the general public what Europe is really doing is a difficult one. You know, we are in the current moment celebrating and putting into practice the European Year of Citizens. And this European Year of Citizens, I tried to give to it a different flavour. Because how do we do these European years normally? We organise a big conference. Well, I thought for the European Year of Citizens it was maybe more efficient to reach out to citizens. And there is where we started last year in autumn with the citizens' dialogues, which are town hall meetings. We are now on our 44th town hall meetings. I started them alone to start with, in the south of Spain, in Greece, in Portugal, in Ireland. So starting with really the difficult places to go in a crisis time. Now it has become very fashionable, and nearly all commissioners are doing the town hall meetings. Very often we do them together with national ministers, with Euro parliamentarians, a duo, a trio, and it works very well. And it is like in a town hall meeting, you see, it's not that the politician makes a speech. It is question, answer, question, answer, question, answer during 2 hours. And I can tell you something, that in most places where I have gone, north, south, east, west, citizens are completely destabilised. because they are not used to ask a question to a politician and to get a real answer. I know that there are exceptions around, because in some of our member states the elected members of the European Parliament go regularly to their constituencies, speak regularly with their constituents, but in most places of Europe it is not the case. And in most places of Europe it was the first time ever that they heard a politician not to make a big speech, but to answer directly to questions. It was very fascinating. I would not have believed in the beginning that this would be the case. It was the case. So after 44 citizens' dialogues going everywhere, we have learned that. And what the citizens' dialogues did good, I give you a concrete example. Remember Bulgaria and the citizens' upheaval. Citizens in the street trying to get to the national parliament, completely up and in arms. Well, they were standing in line 3 hours in order to get into the citizen dialogue. I did this citizen dialogue together with the President of the Republic. Poor man. He was shouted at. He was, I was afraid for his health at a certain moment. But in the end, nothing violent happened. Only the people were expressing their anger. They were expressing their thoughts. And in the end they said, we want more of this. And so the President of the Republic said, well, you will get more of this. And he organised citizens' dialogues all over Bulgaria in order to respond to this need which we had seen was coming up. But then again, I would like to give you some facts and figures. Only 1 in 3 Europeans feel that they are well informed about their rights. 1 in 3. And God knows how during decades in this House the rights of the individuals, of the citizens, have been constructed. But the citizens are not aware that many of the rights they have today, they come because the European Parliament and the European Council were putting their minds to act together in order to give these rights to the citizens. Citizens have never been told that this is the case in a systematic way. But at the same time, and that is also interesting, where our citizens feel they don't know enough about Europe, they would like to know more. If they would know more about their rights, they would go to vote, they tell us, because this is for all those member states where the voting is not obligatory, of course. But then they tell us, well, we feel Europeans. 2/3 of them feel Europeans. And if you ask them then, what does this mean? Nearly nobody knows what it means. And there is a problem we will have in order to reach out, because the questions which we always put and the answers which we always put to our citizens, peace, democracy, unity, well, this is taken for granted. Mostly the young people are not becoming excited anymore if you speak about peace, for instance. If you speak about free movement to young people, well, they take the car and they're going from the north to the south, and they take a train going from east to west. They do not need to show their passport, so what do they speak about free movement? Free movement is granted. And that is a problem which we do have, because we have to develop a new narrative. We have to find new ways in order to get people excited about Europe. We have to find new ways to inspire citizens about Europe. And it is very important that those who have the experience reach out, not so much to the older part of the generation, but to the newer part of the generation. Also a statistic. Do you know that there are twice more people over the age of 50 who go to vote in European elections than first-time voters. So it is mainly in this young generation that this absence of any dream of Europe, of what does Europe give us, what can we do in this Europe, do we have a voice in this Europe, that is a deficiency mainly of the young generation. So it would be very important if those who have the experience could go out before the election campaign already and take young people by the hand. Concentrate on young people. I think it is a responsibility of the older generation to reach out to the very young generation and to tell them about how we created this continent, for what purpose we created this continent, and how this continent is going to live or to starve if we are not building it in the future very strongly. Because there will be real choices this time in the Euro. Because there will be the choice between, do we want a Europe of nations or do we want a Europe of citizens? Do we want a united Europe or do we want a two-speed Europe? Do we want a federal Europe or do we want to continue as we are going now? So there are real choices to be made, and I really do hope that the political parties of the centre, and in the centre I put inside the Socialists and the Greens, I put inside the Liberals and the Conservatives, not the British Conservatives, the other Conservatives, the Christian Democrats are real centre, but those are real centre, but also the more rightist part of this. All this is for me centre, and they have to go out. The fight during this election campaign will not be between EPP and Socialist. The fight this time will be about Europeans and anti-Europeans. And we should keep that in mind, which does not mean that our ideological differences should not be put on the table and that we should not tell to the electors, the voters, where we want to bring Europe to. But the real enemy in a political game this time will not be the other party. It will be movements which want to destroy Europe. And that is why I plead for you to become involved, very much involved so, and to lend your knowledge, to lend your dynamism, to lend your dreams to the continuation of the building of this Europe. I thank you in advance for this, because I know that those who are here are very dedicated politicians, and even if you are a former member, you are still a politician and you still have responsibility to carry. So I count on you for carrying that responsibility and carrying the flag during the next election campaign.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Let me just take the opportunity to especially welcome here those assistants who have come from MEPs' offices, members of the political groups and members of the Parliament's administration who have joined us. Also a special welcome to the students from ULB, the Institute for European Studies, and our thanks to its president, Marianne Dunny, for her fruitful cooperation, and welcome also to journalists from the European Journalist Centre who have joined us as part of a one-day programme organised by DG Com. It's wonderful that you've taken the time to be with us. Now, Commissioner Reding is going to leave fairly quickly to organise one of the council meetings that she's got to deal with, but I did ask her just before she goes if she might take 2 or 3 questions. And I really do mean that, because I don't want to detain her. Okay, David, let me start with you. Peter, number 2, and number 3. So that's 3, and I'll close then on that. Yes.
Right. Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for Madam Redding. It's a difficult question, particularly for the British, when we're having such discussions in the UK about border controls and everything else, and the possibility of restricting the use of migrants from other parts of the European Union countries coming into UK. Well, the last Labour government, of which I was a supporter, did not have any border controls on new immigrants coming in from the enlargement countries. We were much criticised about that, whereas some of the member states did. We felt at the time that we did that because we felt there were no such thing as second-class citizens. Once you become a member of the European Union, and you have all the rights as a citizen of the European Union. Now, things have gone back on us with the British Conservatives, but what about those other countries in the EU who imposed transitory measures, some of them lasting 5-6 years, to restrict the rights of individuals, European citizens, whose countries were members of the European Union, coming into the EU and not having the same rights as other citizens? Surely that's not fair, and we should declare that it's not fair. I've never heard the Commission say that.
Thank you, David. Noted. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Edith Müller und ich spreche in Deutsch. Frau Reding, Sie haben uns...
Let me continue in German. You addressed us as former members. Now I also am involved in campaigning for the elections, and I must say it's difficult for me to go out into the street. Why? Because citizens have lost trust and confidence in European institutions, and that lack of trust and confidence has come out of rules being broken and people having lost their confidence in the context of the financial and economic crisis and how public monies were used in those times. So citizens can no longer trust the institutions. What answer can we give to these people when it comes to returning to a legal framework after the bailout clause was broken and various rules were thrown out? That's the core question in these elections, and I don't have an answer. And another point, as a German representative, increasingly there are critical adjectives being used vis-à-vis other European countries. I hear these terms being bandied about in Europe when it comes to the financial crisis and how we deal with it. So how are we going to counter this? How are we going to respond to these misgivings amongst the citizens? I'd like to hear your views on that.
Thank you. Final question in this round, Peter.
Sorry, right, I'm in business now, I think. Having the mention of the British Conservatives and having been a British Conservative member during my 15 years in this Parliament, let me say that I left that party 16 years ago because of its exact stance that you're talking about. That's merely a preface to my question, which is about the meaning of the European Parliament elections and making the connection with voters. That is something which we've wrestled with for many years, and the aspiration has been that the European Commission President should reflect the result of the election. That is not so simple to achieve in practice. Does Commissioner Reding think that it will happen after the next elections?
Thank you. So we have 3 questions. One observation, Commissioner, just listening to your remarks about young voters. I had the privilege for 6 years, 2 3-year terms, to be President of the European Movement International, which is a civil society organisation. And visiting Austria 5 years ago, or 4 years ago, pre-European election, I discovered that they had, for the European election, reduced the voting age to 16. They accompanied that for quite a while before by a kind of an education campaign in schools, and of all of the age cohorts in Austria who voted, the largest share of the relevant cohort was the 16-year-olds to 18-year-olds, which showed if you made an investment, you got a return, just to make the point. And then the three questions, loss of trust and confidence, the question of free movement, and then Peter Price's observation.
Thank you for this example. And it is very right. You have to invest into the young generation. You have to inform the young generation so that they can make an informed choice. Whatever their choice be, they are free to make that one, but they have to be informed about this choice. And this becomes even worse nowadays with the new technologies and with the very quick wrong information which can circulate on the internet. So it is a challenge to get the young people educated so that they know what they are going to vote for. Now the very difficult question of the border controls and the free movement. The reason why I have to leave is because I am meeting today the ministers of the interior on this question, and the council meeting tomorrow morning will start exactly on this question. Now, we do have 4 freedoms in the internal market, and you cannot separate the freedom of circulation of goods, services and capital from the freedom of movement of the citizens. And I am afraid some of the member states try just to do that. And that is where I say over my dead body as the one who is responsible in Europe for the free movement. And if you really look at facts and figures, and if you do not listen to populism, then you see that there is no real problem actually. I will present the ministers tomorrow with a study which has already come out 10 days ago about where in our different member states social security benefits, benefits for poverty, whatever systems we have set up in our member states, where it goes to. And you can see for each member state that the vast majority, 80–90%, goes to nationals. In some of our member states there is a large portion of the money which goes to third country nationals. That is the fact in Great Britain, for instance, is a fact also in France, for historical reasons. Why there are many people from third countries who are moving in. And a very small part goes to European citizens who take advantage of their free movement. Why? Because the European citizens mainly take advantage of their free movement in order to go to work. So they are normally contributing and not taking the money out. Now, I always hear this argument of the poverty migration. People are just going to the next member state in order to collect the money which is not due to them. Poverty relief or whatever subsidies, I don't know. Now, we have to make very clear what is written in the Free Movement Directive. It is written in this directive that each citizen in Europe, and that means the 507 million ones, has the right to free movement during 3 months. Also, the Bulgarians and the Romanians, because the exception to Bulgaria and Romania is on work. So they are prohibited in many countries until the 1st of January 2014 to take up a job. But to travel as a tourist, you can do that during 3 months. After 3 months, you must show, you must prove that you are not a burden on the social security, on the health system, on whatever system the member state you have been moving to. You are not a burden to these systems. If you are a burden as an individual, you can be put out of that member state. That means the Free Movement Directive already has all the solutions in the populists are asking for. And so tomorrow I will repeat what I said very clearly. Get your house in order, ministers. Make the rules to be applied in your member state. See to it that there are laws which apply the Free Movement Directive, and that if somebody is working against, doing something against these laws after 3 months of being in your country, that you can act. So as simply as that, free movement is not negotiable. It's one of the basic rights of the European Union. It is the one sine qua non. I mean, that is why we have created the European Union, in order to give the possibility to citizens, young or old, to students, to workers, to move in and forth. But like with all rights, it has a double face, the two faces of the same coin. You have the rights and you have the obligations. One doesn't go without the other, but it is not because some do not cling to the obligations that you should eliminate the basic right for all. So second-class citizens is something which, as long as I am responsible for these dossiers, you will never get a policy document or a legal document from the Commission changing the Free Movement Directive. Now the very difficult question on losing confidence, on losing faith. I told you about the 44 citizens' dialogue. I made some 28 of those. So I have really seen the different mentalities in all member states. And we do have the cultural, political and mentality difference in our member states. You do not get the same questions or the same remarks when you are in Greece, when you are in the south of France, or when you are in Berlin, or when you are in Finland, very clearly so. But you are speaking now about your situation in Germany and how the German citizens react. Well, what I try always to explain to the German citizens is, what kind of Europe do we want? Do we want a Europe where we collectively create the rules and then we collectively see that those rules are applied? Do we want a Europe when a member of the family is in difficulties, we help that member through solidarity, under the condition that that member sees that it comes back to solidity? Because that is the deal. And that is exactly what we have tried to do. We have tried to do it with the fiscal compact and with the stability mechanism. And I'm just coming out of the meeting of the College of Commissioners with the incoming Greek presidency. So we had a big part of the Greek government sitting together with the Commission today, discussing about where they have gone to. Have they done enough reforms? Well, certainly they have done unhuman reforms, and such a heap of reforms which are very heavy on the citizens. Have they done enough structural reforms? Have they set up a real functioning administration? There my answer would be, not sure they have. But at any rate, for what has been done until now, they are on the way back to stability, to a normally functioning state anymore. But but the other side of these consequences is that very many people are completely frustrated because what has been imposed on them, they consider it as unfair and very heavy. Now, and that is also something you have to explain to the citizens out there. I always get a lot of applause when I speak about the people. When I speak about the structures, people say, you should be much more harsh on them. But structures are something in order to put in something which is used in order to have an equilibrium in society, and the equilibrium or disequilibrium in society is going for people. I do rarely hear now, also in Germany, what I heard before, just throw them out. Those countries who misbehaved for one or the other reasons. But then I give them also the example of Ireland, for instance, where it was not the structures and the governments which didn't function. The governments functioned very well, the structures functioned very well, but there the banks misbehaved. They went to bankruptcy and the state budget had to finance the banks in order not to have a complete collapse, which then led to a complete collapse of the state budget and all the measures which had to be taken to get out. Well, the good news is that Ireland on the 15th of December gets out of the programme. The good news is for Spain that it has refined and restructured its banks. The good news is for Portugal that it can go back to the market. It was excluded from the market such a long time. And the good news is from Greece that the budget is in equilibrium again, has even a positive budget presentation, so that the debt, at least from the budget point of view, will not grow. So you see that things are coming back to good. But it was very difficult and it will continue to be very difficult. And I do not agree with what I do sometimes hear in Germany, that the rules were broken. Because when Germans tell me this, I remind them who has broken the rules of Maastricht. Well, that were France and Germany who started to break the rules, and das war der Fluch der bösen Tat, because then the breaking of the rules started, and we needed a lot of strength in order to go back to a system where sometimes we play the role as a bad guy who has to tell to the states, well, look, this cannot continue, you have to do this and that reform. Alone the fact that for the first time now all member states have to present their national budget to the Commission before this budget is even presented to the national parliaments. Can you imagine? That is a revolution which has happened. Why has this revolution happened? It has happened in order to see that stability is not broken, that no country, because no country is an island, and what any country does has an influence on the next countries, that no country breaks the rules, goes out in a mad way and puts into danger the neighbouring countries. So all this has been put in place, and I think here it is a real revolution which has happened to establish a federal system of control on the budget, on our fiscal rules, on our banking rules, to break this cosy relationship between the national banking surveillance and the banks on its territory, which have led to some of the problems which we have today. So I think you need, and you see the problems which we have with this. How much time did I take now in order to explain this? But you can say with you, not you, but the people you speak to, they say with one sentence, you have broken the rules. You should have put in, when I was in Marseille, they say, why didn't you put in prison the Greek governments? Me, personally, I should go put them, so you see, you need some explanation to do that. But the slogan, why didn't you put in prison the Greek governments, is a very easy one. And you got a lot of applause for this, which if you are 500 people in the building. So it is difficult to go out to explain, but I do believe that we do have the good arguments, and we see the good results coming slowly to the right direction. 2014 will be hopefully the year where things go up. Is even a GDP growth for Greece of 0.6% foreseen in 2014, after the catastrophe of the break-in by 20% minus, which we have seen before. Then the question on the European elections, how to connect to voters. I think the only way to connect to voters, and you know it, is to go out and to speak to them, to address yourself to them. You can't do it top down. You can't do it from Brussels. You can't do it from London. You have to go to there where the people are. And yes, I do agree with you. Having a direct election of the President of the Commission would help to change the face of the European elections. I'm sorry? Or indirect through the impact. Well, you know that this time we are not going to have a direct election of the President of the Commission, because it is not foreseen in the treaties. I am sure that when we will have a treaty change, that might go into the treaty, because you see how important it is if the people, let's take the last German elections, where there was a choice between two personalities, Peer Steinbrück on the one hand and Angela Merkel on the other, and then on television the debate between the two. Look at France, where they can elect their President of the Republic directly. Look in the United States, how the direct election of the President really brings the voter together. We have seen, for instance, in the United States, if you have the congressional elections together with the election of the President of America, you do have twice as much voters who go to vote, rather than when you have separated the two. So it might bring people to become excited about European elections, and that's why I think it is a good idea. It is an idea which we can try out. It is also an idea which might finally bring us to real European election with European subjects to be discussed, and not an ersatz for local elections during which you decide if you like your local minister or prime minister or not. Because very often European elections, unfortunately, are local elections and not on European subjects. So everything which can help us to get out of this and to go to European decision making. What kind of Europe is this person, is this party standing for? I think that can help, because that is exactly what I said before, and I saw some of your eyes non-agreement when I said that maybe this time already there will be a choice between two Europes. Do we want to have a federal Europe? Do we want to have a Europe of nations? Do we want to have a Europe where some decide, or do you want to have a Europe where also the small member states have a voice? So it is relevant to put these questions on the table, and that brings us then also back to the question of solidarity. I do not believe one should leave that question out. But I have seen also that people understand, wherever I went, by the way, I still have this Marseille citizen dialogue in my head, because their solidarity was used top down all the time, and you always had to come back to explain what solidarity meant. So people do not have the same definition of solidarity means. Very often people think, not in my backyard. So solidarity is a nice concept, but not for me exercising it. And to make people understand that if you have solidarity, then it is solidarity for all, under certain conditions for those to whom you give the solidarity. But to discuss this, you need a lot of effort, you need a lot of engagement, and I am sure you will help us with your personal engagement, to get that message through.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's a great pleasure for us that you took the time to be with us. Thank you for taking the questions, and we will move on, and we wish you well with your work, especially in the sensitive area of migration of which you spoke earlier. Thank you very much indeed.